This is a map of every country that has been represented by a fighter in the UFC, 113 total. And watching the UFC for a while, I feel like many countries have their own kind of MMA style. So in this video, I'm going to be explaining every country's MMA style. Brazil. Before the UFC even existed, Brazil was hosting underground no-rules fights called Vale Tudo, which translate literally to anything goes. There were no gloves and no rounds. And in the middle of that madness was the Gracie family, perfecting a ground fighting style that would change the world, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Most Brazilian fighters also train heavily in Muay Thai, but with a uniquely Brazilian twist, where traditional Thai fighters are patient and calculated. Brazilians fight wildly. They throw spinning elbows and jumping knees, usually in the middle of a brawl. And if they smell blood, they chase the finish like it owes them money. Just look at Jose Aldo, who blended surgical leg kicks with takedown defense that left wrestlers confused. Or Charles Oliveira, who holds the UFC record for most submission wins, but will also stand and bang with anybody. He's as dangerous on the feet as he is on the mat. Brazilian MMA is all about rhythm and controlled chaos. They might get dropped, they might even get rocked, and through it all, they never quit and always go forward, even when tired or even when losing. United States. From the moment the UFC was founded in 1993, American fighters brought something new to the cage: Division I wrestling. American MMA was defined by one thing: control. It starts with wrestling, the engine of American MMA. The US has a massive collegiate wrestling system, and guys like Daniel Cormier, Chael Sonnen, and John Jones brought that grinded out mentality to the cage. They don't just take you down, they keep you down, wear you out, and make you want to quit before the bell even rings. But American fighters don't just wrestle. They strike to wrestle and wrestle to strike. And then there's the ground and pound, the American signature move. Once on top, they don't hunt submissions like Brazilians do. They posture up and rain down elbows. America also helped pioneer MMA as a sport, not just a martial art. Gyms like Jackson Wink MMA, American Top Team, and AKA trained fighters to master all ranges: striking, clinch, ground, with game plans and tactics. That's why American fighters tend to be hyper athletic, well conditioned, and fight IQ driven. They come in with a strategy and they execute it like a playbook. It's a melting pot of styles: boxing from Philly, wrestling from Iowa, kickboxing from LA, jiu-jitsu from New York. No one style dominates, because America is all of them blended into one system. Russia. Russian MMA is built on two major foundations: Sambo and freestyle wrestling. Sambo, short for self-defense without weapons, was developed in the Soviet army for military use. It blends throws, submissions, and striking, all tailored for real combat. Then there's freestyle wrestling, which is huge across Russia, especially in the Caucasus region, like Dagestan and Chechnya. There, kids aren't just taught to wrestle, they're taught to grind you into the dirt. Think Khabib Nurmagomedov. His entire game was pressure, not just takedowns, chain wrestling. If one fails, he switches to the next, again and again and again, until you break. He didn't care about flashy knockouts. He didn't fight angry. He fought with ice in his veins. Take you down, pin you against the cage, maul you. And Islam Makhachev, the same thing, but with even cleaner striking layered on top. Many Dagestani fighters live in isolation, training in the mountains with no distractions, and it works. But there are also high-level Russian fighters like Pyotr Yan, originally from Dudinka, Siberia, with a boxing base, who mostly relies on striking and is known for his fight IQ and technical skill. Mexico. Mexican MMA might still be growing, but Mexican fighters have always known how to fight. If you know boxing, you know exactly what to expect: pressure, cardio, pain tolerance, and war. The Mexican fighting style is built on these three sacred principles: walk forward, take damage, give more. It's not about dancing around or point fighting. It's about breaking your opponent's spirit round by round, punch by punch. Let's talk striking. Mexican MMA fighters come from a culture steeped in boxing. That means crisp hands, brutal body shots, and non-stop combinations. But unlike some boxers who avoid the pocket, Mexican-style fighters live in it. Think of Brandon Moreno, the first Mexican-born UFC champion. He doesn't just brawl, he adapts and scrambles and never fades. It's technical, but tough as nails, a perfect hybrid of strategy and savagery. Then there's Yair Rodriguez, one of the most unpredictable strikers in the UFC. Spinning elbows, jumping knees, off the cage kicks, it's chaos with a rhythm. His style reflects the new era of Mexican MMA, diverse, wild, but always forward. But what about grappling? Historically, this has been the weakest part of the Mexican MMA toolkit. Wrestling and BJJ aren't as deeply ingrained into the culture yet, but that's changing fast. Fighters are training abroad, joining elite camps, and turning those weaknesses into weapons. The one thing that never needs improvement: the heart. Mexican fighters are known for their insane durability and bottomless cardio. They don't gas, they don't break. Even when they're losing, they're really never out of the fight. Why? Because in Mexico, combat's more than a sport. It's a symbol of pride, struggle, and identity. UK. Let's start with the obvious: boxing. The UK is one of the richest boxing cultures on earth, so naturally, British MMA is striking first. Fast jabs, clean footwork, heavy hands. They're masters at in and out movement. Just look at Michael Bisping, the first British UFC champion. He didn't have flashy jiu-jitsu, he didn't have world-class wrestling, but what he did have was volume striking and cardio for days. Fighters from the UK aren't always the most technical, but they're tough, crafty, and relentless. And then there's the evolution. Meet Leon Edwards. Sharp Muay Thai, impeccable timing, and yes, finally, a Brit who can wrestle. Sort of. The modern British fighter is no longer just a boxer. They're becoming more well-rounded, incorporating knees, elbows, clinch work, and submission defense. But make no mistake, at the core of British MMA is the working class spirit. These fighters come from hard towns, harder gyms, and lives that taught them one thing. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be tougher than the guy in front of you. Australia. While the MMA scene in Australia is younger than places like the US or Brazil, it's evolving fast, and it's doing it with a blend of rugged toughness and striking science. Let's break it down. First, striking. Australian fighters are known for clean, calculated stand-up, not wild haymakers or reckless exchanges, but disciplined pressure, leg kicks, and tight boxing fundamentals. There's a clear influence from Muay Thai and Western kickboxing, with an Aussie twist. Throw hard, but throw smart. Look no further than Alexander Volkanovski, a former rugby tank turned into a featherweight king. He doesn't just win, he downloads you. Every round he gets smarter, faster, and sharper. Then you have Jack Della Maddalena, Australia's newest UFC champion. He's got a style that feels like vintage boxing with a modern MMA polish. High guard, smooth head movement, every punch is short, sharp, and meant to hurt. He walks you down calmly, and when he finds the pocket, it's a surgical destruction. He doesn't just trade, he dismantles. Jack's rise to the top wasn't fueled by hype. It was built on consistency. He finished his fights with body shots, slick combos, and footwork that traps opponents in corners they didn't even know existed. Australian MMA is also blue-collar tough. Even the most technical strikers know how to brawl when they have to. Watch Tyson Pedro or Jamie Malarkey. When things go south, they don't fold. They bite down and throw until someone drops. Now grappling, that used to be the Achilles heel, but not anymore. Wrestling and jiu-jitsu have made huge strides in Australian camps, especially with fighters traveling to train internationally and importing elite coaches. Guys like Volk defend takedowns like a wall, even when they're up against monsters like Islam Makhachev. But more than any technique, Australian MMA is defined by composure. They don't panic, they don't gas out, they fight with purpose, patience, and pressure. It's not about flashy knockouts or highlight submissions, it's about solving the puzzle. Ireland. Irish MMA isn't about quantity, it's about impact, and that impact started with one name, Conor McGregor. When McGregor burst in the UFC in 2013, he didn't just represent Irish MMA, he defined it. With a featherweight frame and heavyweight swagger, he walked in, called his shots, and made good on them, usually by sleeping people with his left hand. His style was built on karate movement, boxer's timing, and a deep understanding of range and rhythm. He didn't brawl, he baited. He let you lunge forward, then slipped and made you pay. And now, the next chapter of Irish MMA is here. Ian Gary. If Conor was the showman sniper, then Ian Gary's the technician. He's longer, leaner, and fights with a style that feels like McGregor's blueprint, but stretched over 5 rounds of modern MMA. Gary uses precision footwork and a quick jab. He reads opponents like a seasoned striker, but fights with the energy of someone who still has something to prove, because he does. Where Conor used to use his left hand as a nuke, Gary uses the whole arsenal. Knees, elbows, feints, counters. He's less of a knockout artist and more of a systematic dismantler. And like Conor, Ian brings confidence. Lots of it. Some love it, some hate it. But either way, you're tuning in. And that's exactly the Irish formula. But the grappling's still catching up. Ireland doesn't have a deep wrestling culture, and most of the fighters from the region rely on defensive jiu-jitsu to get back to their feet. You won't see many Dagestani chain wrestlers coming out of Dublin. Georgia. Georgian MMA is based on combat sambo, Greco-Roman wrestling, and a national culture where fighting is a way of life. Kids in Georgia don't just wrestle, they compete. They grow up on the mats, learning how to toss bodies, control hips, and grind opponents into the dust. It's not flashy, it's not pretty, but it works. And once that foundation is built, they start adding everything else. Striking, jiu-jitsu, cage control, turning pressure into a weapon. Let's talk about the man who brought Georgia into the UFC spotlight, Merab Dvalishvili. Nicknamed the Machine, Merab doesn't fight like a man. He fights like a non-stop force of nature. Takedown after takedown, clinch after clinch, scramble after scramble. He doesn't stop. Even when he has you down, he's still moving, still breaking your rhythm. He's the perfect example of Georgian MMA conditioning. Relentless cardio, mental toughness, and zero fear of exhaustion. And he's not alone. Fighters like Guram Kudladze and Ilia Topuria also show off Georgia's explosiveness and aggression, especially in the striking department. They're strong, they're durable, and they bring bad intentions. Now, what about striking? Historically, Georgia's been wrestling first, but as their fighters go international, you're starting to see sharp boxing and aggressive kickboxing layered into that grappling base. They may not have the finesse of city kickboxing, but they make it up with power, pressure, and physicality. And at the core of it all is the Georgian mentality. Never back down, never break. They fight with pride for their families, for their country, and for their coaches. And when the cage door shuts, they don't just want to win, they want to dominate. Georgia's MMA isn't a style, it's a storm. Wrestling as a base, relentless cardio as a weapon, and a growing striking game that makes each new Georgian fighter more dangerous than the last.